So then when he knows how to deal with nothingness, he does not say, I am stressed. He does not say, I am bored. He knows what to do with his time. Then there was lack of social interaction and a fear of alienation. Obviously, during the pandemic, you were supposed to keep to your own family. You were supposed to be inside the house and be by yourself. So getting back into social interaction caused fear and anxiety. You didn't know how to make friendships. You didn't know what to do with other people. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we know that we cannot go back to the post-pandemic or before the pandemic as students, teachers return to the campus, because the strategies you used before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, is not going to work now. Next one. So we have to learn new strategies to engage students post-pandemic. So what we do today and how we decide and what we decide on is what is going to help us make the future of education. We can be innovators by ridding ourselves of what we were doing in the past and embrace the exciting innovation that is already here. And many of us have learned to create new ways of teaching as we learned how to deal with online teaching. That was something so alien to us, but we learned. Now, when we come back to offline teaching, we have to learn new strategies because the composition of the students has changed. They are no longer the students that we had 2 years before. Next slide, please. So, what has changed? Now, I advise that we have to move away from our old way of teaching and devise new ways, because the student has now become a learner who will not sit at his desk in the school and learn from the teacher who is teaching by a board or even simple activities. He needs something fast. He needs to be engaged all the time. Like I said, he doesn't know how to deal with nothingness. So the future is hybrid blending the best of face-to-face and online learning. You have to strike a balance between the two. So let's see how we can do that. Next slide, please. So what did we learn from the pandemic? So this was the greatest disruption in the history of education. Nothing like this has happened before. So we had trial and error system. We learned how to survive. We had to keep ourselves floating. Otherwise, we would have drowned in the pandemic. So now, post-pandemic, we have to focus on how to move from the survival mode to the thriving mode. We finished. We know how to survive, but now we have to know how to thrive. We do this in part by becoming lifelong learners who can embrace change, learn, and adapt. Obviously, this is what lifelong learning is all about. And change will keep coming faster than before in the post pandemic period. Next slide, please. So, so what is it? Some lesson. Closing equity and technological gaps. We bring everybody on the same play field. And technology gap. Now we have learned from the pandemic that we had a technology gap. So that has, now we know that what we need to know by way of technology, how much we need to know. Then we have to put Maslow before Bloom's. These are two theories, and we'll discuss it later on, by providing holistic student support before expectations for higher order learning. So that's very important, Maslow before Bloom. Using technology for hybrid learning that engages students. Now, technology doesn't mean that you have some online classes or you give some presentations to be made. It has to be ingrained into your everyday learning. And that is what we have to learn also. Creating more professional development for the effective integration of technology into instruction of learning. So how we can integrate technology into our classes is what we need to do and learn. So responding to the social emotional wellness needs of the faculty and students. So when we talk about students, it's not as if the faculty was not affected by the pandemic. So all that affects the students, the mental, the physical, has affected the faculty also. And planning for contingencies. What happens if something like this takes place in the future also? How do we plan for that? Next slide, please. So we have Maslow before Bloom. So what is Maslow before Bloom? And everybody knows that Maslow is your physical need, psychological need, self-actualization. So physiological needs are air, water, shelter, sleep, clothing, etc. Safety needs, personal security, employment, a resource for taking care of your everyday needs, and then higher on love and belonging and so on. So the idea is that if Maslow needs are not satisfied, then the Bloom needs cannot be taken care of. For example, next slide, please. Next slide. So we can skip this. We know who Maslow is. So Maslow's two lowest tiers, physiological and safety. Yeah, here. So it involves most of the basic needs such as food, water, shelter, etc. So if the child comes to school on an empty stomach, if he is not sure of the shelter above his head, if he has not had a good night's sleep, if he does not have warm clothes, or is struggling, his parents are struggling to give the basic necessities, how do you expect him to learn what you are teaching him? Even the basic of learning, that is remembering, will not happen. We ourselves, you look at adults. If the husband comes home after a hard day's work and the wife says, thoda bazaar se ye le aiye, to he says, मैं बहुत थक गया हूँ, अब मैं ये नहीं कर सकता. And similarly, if the wife comes home after a hard day's work, physical and mental labor in school, and is expected to make some special dinner, obviously she'll say, let's have some khichdi. Today I'm very tired. So similarly, the students also need to have their basic needs looked into before we can look into their psychological and educational needs. That is, look after their blooms. So next slide, please. So what happens, and what blooms, of course, will take care of knowledge, attitude, and skills. And these cannot take place if we do not put Maslow before Bloom, which is, when, especially the period before the break, children are very hungry, and you'll see that they are very inattentive, they're shuffling because their mind is on the tiffin box. What are they going to eat? So Bloom taxonomy provides more than a list of verbs. It identifies three categories of learning. That is knowledge, which is cognitive, attitude, feelings, and skills, psychomotor. All these have to be taken care of when you're teaching. So be sure to do what you can to separate the problem from the people involved. And the people involved are your students and the faculty. And make every attempt to balance short-term and long-term solutions as often as you can. Now, how do we do that? Now, next slide, please. So suppose you have to make the students understand that knowledge can be the solution for your Maslow. Say, for example, knowledge strengthens you. So if you are afraid of lightning, but through your classroom, you have understood what thunder is and what lightning is. So that, and what sound is, because thunder is often followed by sound. So you will then understand that this is nothing to be afraid of. You may be cautious of it, but you will not be afraid of it. So that takes care of the balance between fear and knowledge. And and it gives you confidence. This matters when you reach out to others who know to share with you their fears and concerns, so that researching and sharing coping strategies and potential solutions can strengthen your collective knowledge. So when we give the students coping strategies, coping with both Maslow, and then leading to the potential solutions will come from Bloom's, then you are strengthening the knowledge of the students. So let's see how we have, next slide please, how we can have behavior management. We all know that teachers and administrators are feeling exhausted and exasperated by the number of students struggling to positively integrate and function within our school and classroom communities. Many of them. So, what's different? The difference is in the state of the students' emotional well being, stamina, and behavior. We've discussed emotional well being because they were away from interactions, away from society, away from friends, away from teachers, away from community. Stamina because there was not much physical activity in the 2 years. And so this affected their behavior. They either became very aggressive or they were reticent. Next slide, please. So the pandemic classroom, cafeterias, fields, etc. There you have increasing number of emotional displays and dysregulation. Some students have become more combative and disruptive. I'm using the word combative because you will find bullies, you will find fist fights, you will find students trying to gain attention by carrying out these physical activities, physically fighting, screaming, swearing, running away, skipping schools, throwing tantrums, flipping desks. All this is happening. Self-harming and hiding in the bathrooms. Other students have simply checked out and are disinterested, off task, and unmotivational. So you have two sides of student behavior. Next slide, please. And I'm sure you can relate to them. So some other behaviors, schools cannot expect to employ pre-pandemic approach to classroom management. Obviously not, because the students' composition has changed. Educators must consider where students currently are in terms of socialization, problem solving, and coping skills. We need to instill these into our students to meet students' evolving needs. And they are evolving all the time, they're changing all the time. I have developed a behavior management model that has worked successfully in both classrooms and administrative offices. And I've coined this strategy as ARC. A, articulate, R, reason, C, commit. So unlike behavior management strategies that respond to poor student conduct, ARC is more proactive. It focuses on preserving lesson integrity and taking the guesswork out of expectations. So, because nowadays the students will say, sorry, I didn't do this, I couldn't do this, I didn't know how to do this, I didn't hear what you were saying, I couldn't get your instructions, I didn't write 3 pages, I thought 1 page is enough. So let's see, next slide, please. So you must articulate everything. Difficult student behavior is often correlated with emotions such as fear, anxiety, anger, and insecurity. Very, very much prominent nowadays. In many cases, educators can prompt an adverse emotional response from students by managing the experience or the lesson itself. That depends on how you tackle a lesson, that you can move away the fear and anxiety and insecurity of the student. That begins with clear, concise, consistent communication. You have to articulate everything out loud and often. Articulate your expectations, your vision, your values, the assignment step by step, and all the nuances that you can possibly foresee. Next slide, please. So, what is next slide? So, imagine being in your student's seat. Put yourself in the student's position, and what questions would you have about the expectations for the assignment and grading criteria? Think about it. This is what the student will want to know. So, tell them ignorance is not bliss. The more students understand what is expected of them, the more likely they will feel comfortable with the lesson experience. If you don't tell them the rules of the game, they won't know how to play the game. So, at the outset, articulate what is the game, how is it to be played, what are the guidelines, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. The second of the ARC is reasoning. The student must know why you are telling him to do something or why you are teaching him a particular lesson. What is it in it for him? Why should he study it? Is there any relevance in his life? So, the rationale behind why a particular lesson or experience is valuable and why the parameters and expectations associated with the lesson are in place. Lessons that aren't immediately relevant will fall flat. So, if he doesn't know why he's doing that lesson, he's not going to pay attention. Why do we have to do this? Is the question we have to answer. Younger students, on the other hand, are less apt to question the validity of an experience, just as they are likely to question the motive and expertise of a teacher or administrator. If you say, do not run in the hallway, the student may turn back and say, why? So you have to say, do not run in the hallway. You may fall down or you may hurt somebody else. So once you give the reasoning, the student will surely follow what you want him to do. So the expectations have to be made clear to the student. Next slide, please. Next. So reasoning, when teachers share their thinking, they have a pedagogical move. It's also relationship building. It makes the teacher more amenable to the student, not the tyrant that students picture a teacher to be. Rational trust is a foundational element in all aspects of developing a strong and healthy school culture. You must reason out everything, what he should do and why he should do. All the rules should be laid down with reasoning. We are doing this because. Next slide, please. Then commit to your plan. Don't go back on it. I need you to complete this assessment by this date. Now, there may be students who will say, can we give it 2 days later? No, it's not a negotiating table. There is no negotiation in this. You have to give it on this day. You have to have so many pages of writing on it. Can I do 3 pages instead of 5? No. So There is no negotiation. So one of the most common mistakes I see is what I call classroom management by negotiation. So you maybe say, I'm a good teacher, I am very lenient to my student. I say, okay, you can give whenever you complete. Once you open the gates of negotiation, there is no closing it. So commit your plan to the students beforehand and keep to it. These are too important to be negotiated as ad hoc. This is not the same as giving students choice and voice or personalizing, differentiating instruction. Such strategies are carefully embedded in the lesson plan. When you're doing the lesson plan, you're also giving the dates of submission. Next slide, please. So this we have just discussed. So we can go to the next slide. In hundreds of classroom observations I've conducted, both as principal and administrator mentor, I've seen some amazing lessons deteriorate rapidly as teachers indulge in spontaneous negotiation with the student. And I've said, on the surface, negotiation seems like a reasonable strategy, but if you open the door once, it is impossible to close. Teachers need to exhibit certainty and confidence as the leaders of learning in their classroom. If they allow classes to devolve into negotiating tables, they lower their standards because students will no longer trust in the academic and behavioral expectations that their teachers has articulated and reasoned. Remember, committing is the third layer. First was articulate and reason. So if you negotiate, your articulation and reason is left to doubt. So there is no negotiation, which is you are only going to tell them. In anything, so you often have this, we are very tired. Can we have a games period today? Please don't teach today. You have many students with these kind of uh, requests. So, no, sorry, we are going to do it, but we'll play as we go along. So, your classroom becomes a playroom as you are teaching in a play way method. That adaptability you must have. Next slide, please. Okay, this we have done. So, we know that engaging students is important. So what strategies can we help students to thrive? Remember, we have moved from survival to thriving. So we successfully transitioned our students to remote learning using strategies and emphasis that disruption is an opportunity for innovation. When classes were disrupted, we innovated to see that the learning did not stop. Now, here are some specific strategies recommended, take it or leave it, to incorporate for an effective hybrid learning model moving forward. Now, we cannot deny that technology is here to stay. Technology is not going to take your place, but you have to have a healthy balance between the two. So, let's see how we can do this. Next slide, please. Backward design. So this is a three-step process in planning your instruction. We all do our lesson planning way ahead before we come to the classroom. So this is planning instruction with the end goal in mind. Remember, we had reasoning. So why are we doing this particular lesson? You have to reason it out for yourself. Later on, you are going to tell the students that you're doing this for this. What is the identify learning outcomes? So what is the student expected to learn from this lesson? Determine what students should know and be able to do at the end of the unit, whether it is language or science or social science. You must know how much a student should know during that lesson, what he should know, and how he should apply that knowledge is what the lesson planning is all about. Determine acceptable evidence. What assessments supported by rubrics will be given to show evidence that students have understood and achieved the learning outcome of the unit. So rubrics makes your assessments very objective. Otherwise, the students will come. I wrote the same as that person, but that person got more marks than I did. And you have the rubrics before you. You can explain very, very objectively why this person, where he has come down in his marks compared to the other person. I'll give you an example of rubrics. Next slide. This is one example of a rubrics. You have to draw up your own rubrics for your assignment or for a lesson that you're doing. This is for a language. So comprehension of text, textual evidence, organization, formal voice. Voice means the way he, uh, makes the sentences, sentence fluency and grammar, format, and then the total score. So you can put your own marks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and show the students where they are and how much marks they've got and why. It's very, very clear, very logical. So you can draw up rubrics for each of your assignments. Next slide, please. So that was backward design. Now, to do all this, to keep the students engaged, and they need to be engaged because they don't know how to deal with not doing anything. So learning experience, figure out the why and where. So plan and scaffold learning activities. You must have a number of activities in your bag that will help students achieve the goals of the unit. So I'm giving you some examples. The first is icebreakers, where students come to school for the first time after the pandemic, and they are very diffident. They don't know how to, behave with the whole unit that is called school. So you have an icebreaker activity that is the students will get to know each other again because we have changed during the pandemic. These activities could be anything that involves talking to other people or teamwork like sports, games, or perhaps just having people sit in a circle and talk. Now you can have two circles and play music and let those two circles go anti-clockwise, stop the music, and the two people facing each other will talk about anything, and then later on you can ask the student, what you do observe about your partner. He may talk about his dress, he may talk about the hairstyle, he may talk anything. So his uh, observation skills and his communication skills and his interaction skills will come into the fore. So here, this helps students to socialize. The results of the game are often fascinating, interesting, and humorous. So somebody can say, he's wearing his shirt, but his collar was inside, or he's changed his hairstyle. It looks like a lawnmower, whatever it could be. So it's interesting, and they all loosen up because they have been all tight-lipped, tightened torsos in the house. So here they are helping them to be familiar with each other. Next, so this was icebreaker. Next would be debate. We all know. So suppose you have this debate on honest disagreement is often a good sign of progress. Now, this debate happens. The topic will be according to the lesson that you are teaching. So you give a lesson, you do a lesson, and then you pick out a sentence or you pick out a theme from there and have two groups debating. Now, what happens? One will talk in favor, one will talk against the motion, like any debate. Why we are doing it? Because we want to enhance critical thinking and independent research and skillful communications. Learn to think in different perspectives. I may not agree with what I am going to say, but I have learned to say it. Helps to develop knowledge, provides an active environment because there'll be questions asked, and there'll be rebuttal. An entire lesson can be understood through a debate after you have done the lesson. So, or you can say, okay, read this lesson. I'm giving you 15 minutes to read the lesson. I'm breaking you into two groups, and one will have questions to ask for the motion, and one will ask against the motion. You can even have something like honesty is the best policy. Do you agree? So let them debate on that. You'll be instilling some values into them. Next slide, please. So quiz. You can have quiz. We all do quizzes. Now, quiz is a set of questions that teacher may form for the lesson that is going on, or you can have students broken into groups and they form questions and ask the other groups. It depends on how you want and what is the question, what is the lesson that you are doing. So it keeps everybody engaged and everybody on their toes, because each one is listening that this must be my turn to answer or my turn to ask a question. Next, we'll go fast because there's hardly any time. So role play, again, this is a fun-filled activity. They, according to, somebody can become, Biden, or somebody can become, nowadays, we have a lot of political upheaval. So somebody which becomes the Prime Minister of Russia and the Prime Minister of Ukraine, and they role play on that. So you get to know what the uh, students think of the situation. Or you can have elections in the UK, whatever. So that's role play, and you can have your own topics for your role play. So role play doesn't mean that they dress up, they just take on the nuances of the person. Next. So student presentation, this we said, we have to blend technology. So they make their own presentations, and you can do it group wise, you can do it individual. This takes on, this lends itself to every subject. So students attain public speaking skills, deep evaluation of the given topic. Modern presentation skills can be used, because you're not just, doing something. They can use many other, they can use Flash and whatever they want to enhance relationship with technology. And nowadays students are better than students. They have many fascinating ways to show their skills. Next. Fishbowl, this is again a very good way to know how much the students have taken in. You have a bowl, you finish the lesson, ask the students to put their questions into it. Or you break the teams, make teams, they put their questions into the fishbowl, and next day the questions are picked up by the other team and they have to answer it. You can reverse the teams as you wish. So students can ask questions regarding the study material without fear, because they are not writing their names. Different possible questions could be derived and class becomes active. Next. Students as teachers, give the student this. You have to give the teachers, student teacher, a day or two advance notice. So he or she comes prepared, and the student teaches the class. So this, of course, the creativity of the student is in teaching is brought out, and the student is also sensitized to the teachers of how and why they teach in the way they teach. The classroom becomes more interesting with the presence of a young teacher. Next. Next slide, please. Case study. So this is interesting. After having done some lessons, you give real life stories. Nowadays, I find it very interesting when there are debates on the TV regarding the choice of words that our politicians use and the kind of, speeches that they give. So you could give that, the moral aspect of freedom of speech. Give them a case study. Or you are going somewhere and you are caught in a traffic jam for over 2 hours, make a case study of how you will find solutions for this problem. So here you are. They are made aware about real world problems outside. Don't just pick up problems from anywhere. Please relate them to the topic that you are teaching in the class. So a comparison of what has studied with real life experience is of great worth. So you can take on the worth of cars and the need to follow traffic rules and need to have basic cautionary equipments in the car. Give that as a case study also. Next slide, please. Problem-based learning. Give them a problem. We've already in the case studies, we've given 2 problems. Let them find solutions for that. You can even give problems of your own. You know, the children are not paying attention in class, or 100% attendance is a dream for a teacher. So that's a problem they have to solve because they are doing it. And it'll be interesting to know their viewpoint. Next one. Next one. Class discussions again. After you have done, you could break a unit into various chunks and have class discussions on that. So allow ample time for students to respond, makes them active and confident with their points. All these activities you are doing to engage the students as well as bring back their confidence, which was not there pre-pandemic. So you are giving them different perspectives of and this will bring, because in a class discussion, you'll have different perspectives of a single issue. Like you could again take the moral aspect of freedom of speech, or, the coalition government versus a single party government. Anything, it's up to you. So what are the next slide, please? Advantages of having different activities inside the classroom. They include it boosts up the learning experience and help shape up children's behavior. Each activity provided to students offers them opportunity to deepen their understanding of the concepts that they have learned in the classroom. So it's not as if you're only having activities, you're compounding the learning that you want them to learn. It's not just play and games, but in your own playway method, you are teaching them slowly, teaching them to gain. Like mother will, grate the lauki and make koftas out of it and put sauce and all and say this is Manchurian. And person who doesn't eat lauki, the students will eat. So you are only giving your lessons on a platter that is palatable to the students. So interesting learning activities can revitalize both mind and body. So next slide, creating alignment. This we have done. These are again various ways of uh, okay. These are various ways of engaging students. Now, creating alignment in delivery, syllabus, content, and course design. What is the syllabus? What is the content? And how are you going? What is your design in delivery? So, syllabus is an agreement between student and faculty, and it provides a strong beginning to the semester. It sets the tone. That is the syllabus. Content emerges from what the syllabus says will be covered in the course. And alignment is important. You can't have a syllabus and a content disagreeing with each other. So course design is the scaffolding used to hold together the online or hybrid course. So course design, you have to have a blend of both. Next slide. So what do? We have so many things. So you plan, you do, you study, you act. So first you plan, then you put it into action, and then you see whether it is working or not, whether 95% of the students have uh, gained from your planning and your implementation. If yes, you can continue with it. If no, then go back to the and plan in another way where more students will understand. Next slide, please. So, how can we prevent the schools to post-pandemic? Inculcating the habit of handwriting, something that they have lost, something they have to relearn. Exercising daily, following a balanced and healthy diet. Again, Maslow before Bloom. Talking to a school counselor and being in touch with teachers and friends. I have a problem. Who do I go to? So you must have approachable people that a student can go to. Obviously, taking the vaccine and maintaining social distancing at home and elsewhere. Staying in touch with social circles in schools, friends from part of the school. Social circles, you have clubs, you have games. So you keep in touch with them. You don't alienate yourself and stay away from all this. Productively using time by signing up for activities and courses online or offline. Staying positive and motivated and developing new skills and hobbies. And one of the skills that we need to develop is how to deal with oneself. We ourselves need to deal with ourselves. We have all the solutions to the problems that we have, and only I can understand my own problems the best. Next slide, please. So these are practical takeaways. Social media use is associated with anxiety, and increased time kids have spent with screen may account for some increase. We've discussed this. This is just recapping that because they have been with the social media so long, it causes stress. Non-screen activities will diminish these stress and anxiety that is found by long use of online. So, they need to play outdoors, they need to exercise, and so on and so forth. Next slide. So, they need to build relationships, keep and interact. Research has found that children cope with post disaster and anxiety differently. Some become very vociferous, some become silent. Some want to talk about it, some don't want to talk about it. So, those who don't want to talk about it, so be it. Why do we need to pressurize them to express their thoughts? It's okay. Uh-oh, I don't know what this is. So, we need to we need the students to tell us what they want to discuss and whether they want to discuss it or not. Then we have every school has a counselor or a teacher who is approachable, friendly to the students, and the student can go to that teacher. If the child seems anxious or depressed, a counselor can determine the course of action to be taken. And then many positive lessons from the pandemic. So we have learned to be, resilient, determined, great, patient, and hope. So return to school with a toolkit of strategies. You have your own strategies. So techniques and the attitude. We need a very positive attitude. We need to know new things. This is the new normal. So we need to learn new ways to attract our students. We need new ways to attract ourselves to our own profession. We can't just keep doing what we were doing before. Staying open to innovation and continuous improvement are important to creating an equitable ecosystem where students and faculty thrive. Now, if we ourselves don't find any enjoyment in what we are doing, how can we transmit enjoyment to our students? So if we show boredom, the students will be bored. If we show excitement in what we are doing, the students also will be excited. And some of them will come up with new ways of what to do in the class, and we can learn from those students. Last slide. Next slide. That is. So let us keep our chin up Let us be proud of ourselves because we have done a lot which we thought we were not able to, we may not be able to do. So, a classroom is where students spend most of their daytime. Therefore, it is important that classrooms should be active in order to generate energy amongst children. Classroom environment makes or breaks learning experiences. Interesting classrooms. And I'm not saying you use games and all the time. Make it interesting. You have it in you how to make it interesting. You can show clips, movie clips, and base your lesson on that. You can show YouTube. There are lots of things to on YouTube. So interesting classrooms always maintain space for activities which engage the students and teachers, resulting in effective learning. So, interesting classroom, activities for engaging, or whichever strategy you have to engage the students and yourself to make your learning effective. Those are strong words, very vital words. We all need to do it. So now we come to the last slide. Any questions? So if you have a question or you want to, share a strategy that you have applied and worked, you may want to put up your hand and share it. We'll unmute you and we can share that. We know that our students are very different, extremely different, and definitely more knowledgeable because they have 2 years of researching on the laptop. So they have a lot of it and lots of questions. And we have probably some of the answers, if not all. We have also researched, we have also shown resilience. If it was not for you teachers, our education system would have collapsed. But it hasn't, because you are there. You are willing to learn. You are also a lifelong learner. You have adapted and adopted. So we move forward. We know that the future is unknown. What we do know is the future is never going to be just offline classes or offline education. The technology is here to stay, and technology is going to keep changing. So we have to keep ourselves abreast with the many nuances of the technology so that we can effectively bring it into our classrooms. Otherwise, our students will be way ahead. Even now, if something goes wrong with this, cell phone, even a third or fourth standard student can tell you how to rectify it or what has gone wrong. So see where we are. We belong to the old school, quite a few of us, but most of us have done well. And I'm sure the students are grateful for that. The nation is grateful for that. And the nation salutes each one of you because each one of you has played a very, very vital part in the life of the students during the pandemic. So now put off your collars and bring them back post pandemic into the kind of leaders and nation builders that we want them to be. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have no questions, then we will end this session. No questions? Great. Nothing? Good. So thank you for helping me, Eknema. And thank you all for listening with such great patience. I don't know whether you're listened or not, but I see so many names here. So hopefully, yes, I was not visible because I put the video off. I think the presentation is more important than faces. So anyone who would like any help with my presentation, please feel free to contact me. I will be very happy to help you out and share the presentation. So shall we log out?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable and wonderful session, ma'am.
Thank you so much for helping me. So, okay. So, good evening. Have a great evening.
Thank
Have a great rest. Let your Maslow take over before you come to blooms. Otherwise, you will not bloom. Thank you.